How to get over a fear of failure. G'day, welcome back to Super Freak. Oh my gosh, this is probably the conversation that is underneath the conversation in every conversation I have with clients every day. Fear of failure is rife. There's also a fear of success, yes, but that comes after you get over a fear of failure and you start and you begin. That brings up other things like what happens if I lose someone by being successful and that kind of stuff. And again, fear of success is a nice disguised way of having a fear of failure as well, because with a fear of success, you're afraid of failing at continuing to do the things that you love by being successful. That's what fear of success is. So we're going to focus on a fear of failure today because I know it's one of the hardest things for people to get over and get through. And I also know that the ability to get through this is underneath everyone who has ever done anything worth doing, and nobody is immune to a fear of failure. So let's dive in. So I see a fear of failure happen at every single stage of the performance spectrum. And I mentioned what a fear of success is. That's the last stage. But sometimes it even happens at the very beginning. Like before you even say what it is that you want, what if I admit what it is that I want? And then just by saying it out loud, someone laughs at me and they think I can't have it or I can't do it or they think it's silly. Or what if I realize that saying it out loud, it's so unrealistic, it could never be done. I'd rather tell myself I don't know what I want. So I meet a lot of people who say, I'm not really sure what I want. And I always say to them, everybody knows what they want. Sometimes this is just what gets in the way. It's a fear of failure. So I'd rather tell myself I don't know what I want, because then I don't have to admit that I have to do something about it, or that it's actually quite difficult, or it might be something that people around me may not believe in me to be able to do. The next stage is, I admit what I want, and then I realize I have these really scary thoughts about I'm not actually good enough, or I can't do it, or I'm not that kind of person, or I don't come from that kind of family, or I don't have the right education, or I'm too old or too young or whatever. What if I work on my mindset and I realize I'm right and I do suck and it's true that I'm not good enough and that I'll never be able to do it? Then I'll have proof, and that will be so disappointing. I'd rather not even begin. Then the next phase, there's admitting what you want, and there's kind of looking at what's in the way in terms of your mindset. And then there's taking action. What if I take action and I realize I can't do it? What if I take action and I realize it's too hard? What if I take action and I feel dumb? What if I take action and I make myself look silly, or I fail, or I stuff it up, or, I get found out that I'm making it up as I go? Ooh, right. What if I get almost the way there? What if I put in all this time, energy, money, effort, and pride, and tell my family and friends that this is what I'm doing, even though they might not have faith in what I'm doing, and I don't get there? Oh my gosh, what if I waste all that time? I might as well not start. So I see fear of failure, and then of course there's the fear of success. Okay, I'm on my way, but what if I get this now and I don't know what's next? What if I get this and I lose everyone that I love? What if I burn out? There's all kinds of different fears of failure around creating the things that you want. It is insidious, and we need to learn how to be with it, because it is underneath absolutely everything. But I tell you what, on the other side of a fear of failure is total freedom, absolute freedom. So today I'm going to show you how to move through a fear of failure. I'm going to share some anecdotes, some stories, and some tips, and you're going to get through it, and we're going to do it together. It's going to be fun. So I don't know if you've picked it up yet, because I have not been sort of overt with this. I've been a little bit more covert with it, but Super Freak is a podcast about failure. It's about learning to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And a fear of failure, I want you to think about it more like a fear of fear, not a fear of failure. And I'll explain what I mean in a moment. The secret to the fear of failure is that there really is no such thing as failure. Even when you quote unquote fail, even when you stop. And yes, this does apply to situations where there is only one winner and everyone else is a loser. I mean that in, sporting events, there's only one trophy at the top. There's only one person who can win, or one team that can win, right? I'm talking about The fear of failure being present, no matter how high the stakes, no matter what the circumstances, this is how you get over it, because there are no guarantees in life. I can't guarantee that you're not going to fail, but I can help you get over a fear of failure. And the one thing you need to do in order to succeed is really get over this and not stop until it's done. So like I said, there's no such thing as failure. Even when you quote unquote fail, you will never not learn something. And that is the point. Now, before you think I'm about to get all Pollyanna on you and be like, just, everything happens for a reason and just be positive. That's not what I'm talking about whatsoever. I am talking about a commitment until. So you might be headed down one path, it doesn't work, and you can decide that was a failure. But if you really look at it, you will learn something. Whether it's a tournament where there's only one winner and you don't win, you will have learned probably a new technique, how to deal with high pressure circumstances, what you did wrong, how to develop your skill under fire and under pressure. And if you just keep going back, there is no such thing as failure there. Those lessons and those insights will apply to other things. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because I'm giving you examples. I want to say this. What we risk when we're going for something, anything, is not getting it. Anytime you go for something, you risk not getting it by doing the thing. You risk being disappointed. You risk looking silly. You risk looking not smart or dumb. You risk someone else being right about you or right about what's possible for you. Oh gosh, disappointment is probably the worst thing, but you risk putting in all that time and energy and money and effort and patience and it not working, and you having to turn around with it. This is what we imagine, our tail between our legs and I failed. But I tell you what, that's what it looks like from the outside. And if you can accept that that's actually just the price of entry, you'll be free. Anyone who's achieved anything has risked massive failure and felt exactly the same way as you do. It's not about getting rid of that fear. It's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because the fear will never not be there when you're doing something for the first time, when you're risking something, when it means something to you. It will never not be there. But you know what? Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is as simple as reframing this in your brain. You can do uncomfortable things. You do them all the time. And the reason why you do them, like say exercise or cleaning up or staying consistent with your work, the reason why you do those things is because you've already thought about the consequence of not doing them and you don't like it. You don't like what happens when you don't exercise or when you don't clean up after yourself or when you don't stay consistent with the things that you want to stay on top of. So you do it whether you feel like it or not. The way you make yourself do those things and get comfortable being uncomfortable is the same way that you make yourself do the things you're afraid to fail at if you actually want to do them. So you look at the consequences of not doing them and you ask yourself, is that what I want? Can I live with this in my life? So for example, what if you never had a crack? What if you always wonder, what if? What if for the rest of your life you question whether you could have done that and you wonder what could have been if you just spoke up or said something or, started? What if you got to the end of your life and you realized you wished you gave yourself the opportunity to be happier and you didn't? Or you wish you had the courage to live a life that was more true to you? These are, by the way, 2 of the top 5 regrets of the dying. Fear of failure gets in the way. I think that would be worse than having a go at something that you really want to do and not being successful straight away. Now, the trick is confidence and comfort are a byproduct of taking action. They are not a prerequisite. They are not required. In fact, they're almost impossible to have before you start, unless you've already done the thing 100 times. But the first time you do it, you're not going to feel confident. The first time you do it, it's probably going to suck. It's probably not going to be that great either, because you'll continue to improve every time you do it. So you're supposed to feel awkward. You're supposed to have fear. And if in that moment you feel that fear, and you feel that discomfort and you're worried and your mind is yelling at you and playing tricks and, saying all the things that it says, if in that moment you can make it even more painful to think about not doing it than about how awkward you are in this moment, you're free. you can do absolutely anything. And you know what? The best bit is at this point. This is where all the cool things happen. The best bit begins because once you realize that your fear of failure is a total illusion and you've paid that price of entry, you have realized and decided that it's more painful for me not to do this, and you are free, you get to treat the rest of the experience like a playground. You get to learn to be the best by experiencing it. You get to practice and you get to enjoy the ride. And enjoying the ride makes it easier to learn, faster to learn. Your memory is better. Your experience and the way that you actually put things into practice, your ability to assimilate the education becomes faster and easier, especially when you combine commitment with the enjoyment of the ride. So if you are enjoying it because you've gotten over your fear of failure and you're committed to keep going no matter what for the rest of your life, your performance actually increases fourfold. It's incredible to see the research on this. So commitment and freedom to do what it is that you want. Hey, I want to interrupt this podcast just for a moment to say if you are loving this conversation around fear of failure and getting over it and what it feels like and how to do it, then I want to invite you to come and work with me in one of my upcoming group coaching masterminds. There are two ways we can do it. One is if you are focused on business and making consistent income specifically. And the other is if you are looking to go from good to great and your fear of failure is right up in your face. They don't start for a while, but I thought if you'd love to join the waitlist for that and make sure that you can secure a seat or find out more, just click the link. I will leave it below this podcast episode and I'll be in touch with a little bit more information about that. Okay, back to the episode. Now, I know that me telling you this is not necessarily going to be the thing that helps you get over it. You've still got to experience this. And in my workshops and in my coaching, I give people activities and games to play all the time to help them find that playfulness and that freedom in being able to get over themselves, literally, and do something that's uncomfortable, right? And so I'm going to give you a couple of examples of people that I've been really inspired by over the years. You know, you might look at them and think, well, they're just incredible. Maybe they were born that way. But there is such a deep commitment and a willingness to fail and a willingness to look silly and a willingness to just keep getting up and giving it a crack, knowing full well that the risk of not doing it is so much greater that once you kind of see what goes on behind the scenes here, you realize it's not that glamorous. As in, it's not that someone was just born that way and they walk onto the stage and they're incredible. Like, there's a lot of grit. There's a lot of ugly. There's a lot of, well, failure. There's a lot of failure. But the key is they know that not doing it feels worse and they're committed for life, and it actually feels good to just be on the road and in the process. And this is another piece to this. When you are committed and you've taken the first step, you're still going to feel uncomfortable, but the feeling of being on the path to what it is that you want, even though you haven't gotten there yet, actually feels like success. I know it sounds really weird, but when you're doing what you're meant to be doing, when you're doing what would make you really happy, when you're following your heart or following your dreams, when you're really going for something that you truly want, every step of the way still feels like success. Even though sometimes there is no, like, I've made it. You know, sometimes it's a competition where there is a final moment and it is finite. But for the most part, the fear of failure is this illusion because the game that we're playing is actually not a finite game. It's infinite. It's like business, or it's like a relationship, or it's some version of success that could only ever be momentary, and then the rest of your life kind of happens. You know, like even if it's being on stage, winning an award, or landing an amazing gig as an actress and being in front of the screen and doing your job, you still have to go home and take a shower, you know. You still have to go home and answer to your kids if you have kids, you know what I mean? There's still a lot of normal life that happens around this. So the fear of failure is made to be so much larger in our minds than it really is. And when you can remember that there is so much on the other side of it that you would regret not doing, you can start. And then when you start, you can realize that just starting feels like success. And when you do that, you start to really enjoy the ride and enjoy the journey of improving your craft. That's how you are able to remain committed to doing it. And then you're even more likely to be successful. So I hope this is making sense. But I want to speak to a couple of examples of now folks who I know who had just this amazing ability to face failure in order to become great. And the first person I want to talk about is actually my younger brother. So I remember when he first started martial arts, he would have been 10 or 11, and he was this cute little, scrawny little kid. He was so cute. And he entered tournaments. He was like fast, and it was something that he instantly kind of took to. I think he just felt really good being so active and moving his body. He's a very creative person. Anyway, he really took to martial arts, but he was so tiny. It was really hard for him to fight. Some kids his age were twice his size. And I remember after every training session, he would ask one of the big black belts, like a big man, to spar with him after class. I remember watching him. I remember being there to pick him up, and he was crying. And one of the older instructors was fighting him, but not completely, hurting him. He was fighting him just above his ability. So it was outside of his comfort zone, but it was not too much for him. It was really, really, really respectful as an instructor. Anyway, he would do this every single time he went to training. He'd stay back like an hour, and these instructors just love working with people who are so committed like that, and they would fight. He'd be missing things, he'd be tired, he'd be exhausted, he'd be crying because things hurt or his confidence was knocked, and at the end he had the biggest smile on his face because then he started rocking up to tournaments and he became quite competitive. So this happened over years and years, and I watched this scrawny little kid turn into a big muscly bloke who was dominant. He was at the top of his game by the time he got to black belt and open weight. He was incredible and someone to be watched. But people would see that and think, oh, he's probably naturally talented. But what they didn't know was the years and years he spent way out of his comfort zone asking someone to push him that hard so he could learn to be better. And I learned so much from him. In those early years, it was just so inspiring, just a kid doing that. The other person that I want to mention here is a client of mine who I just think is incredible. I'll keep everyone's privacy, but she is based in the Manhattan area, and she wanted to work on this fear of like people judging her. She didn't want people to, sometimes when she's an actress and when she goes into roles, sometimes she has to do things and it's kind of embarrassing. And she said one of her biggest fears was like people kind of judging her, thinking that she looks stupid or something like that. So I gave her this dare and I said, okay, I want you to go into a store that doesn't sell pizza and I want you to ask for a pizza. She was like, what? Now, I learned this game off someone else and I've played this game at so many of my workshops, and I've had even the most confident, strong-willed women who come to my workshops telling me they are very efficient and very good at things call me after the workshop and say, I'm sitting in my car outside a chemist. I've been here for 20 minutes and I cannot work up the courage to go in and ask for a pizza because I'm so afraid of looking dumb or wrong or silly. And I'm like, just go in. You're never going to see these people again, right? So this is the game that we love to play. So I told her, go into a store and ask for a pizza. And they are going to think you look ridiculous and silly. Actually, I had a client go into, I think it was Chanel, and they asked her to leave, which to some people would be the most horrendous, embarrassing thing ever. I totally understand. But in this game, getting kicked out, like being asked to leave, you kind of win the game, right? It's about going somewhere, and it's not about being disrespectful. It's about being playful, and seeing what happens. Anyway, I told her this story about the person who went to Chanel and, what happens to people. It's a scary game. I fully acknowledge it. But when you can walk in somewhere and know that someone's going to misunderstand you and think you're silly and then potentially judge you, and you get through that and you realize, I didn't die, you have absolute freedom. So what did she do? She walked into Manhattan Gucci and she went right up to a person and put on her very best, acting skills and was like, can I get a pizza around here? And she did such a great job that even the guy who worked at Gucci was like, I don't know, do we sell pizza? And she kind of had him confused a little bit. And she kept the role playing for a little while, and they were like, no, we don't have pizza. Maybe we should have pizza. And anyway, she's like, oh, well, and she left. And since that day, everything has kind of changed for her because she was willing to walk in somewhere and be completely misunderstood and not feel bad about herself, but own the room and own the space and own that it was okay to fail and to not know. Now, it's a funny game, it's a silly game, and I fully acknowledge it might be risky sharing it on this podcast because it could be a little bit misinterpreted. I get that. But the whole point of the game is to really prove to yourself that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to stuff up and it's okay to be silly and play. And at the end of the day, you won't die. And those people might go home and be like, someone asked for a pizza today. I didn't really get it, but that's about it. They're never going to think about you again and it's over. Getting okay with discomfort, that's what it requires. But we can sit here and talk about it all day and you can tell me, yeah, cool. I get that, Haley. It's fine. But you walking into a store and asking for a pizza is a very different, like intentionally asking for a pizza knowing that they don't sell a pizza is a very different game. It has brought the most confident women to a halt, I'm telling you. So if you want, you can go ahead and play that game and test it out and have freedom in not knowing everything and not having it all together. Or you can think about what it is that you really want to do that you are afraid to fail at. And you can think about what it's going to be like if you don't do this and if you can live with that. And then you can start and you can let me know that you started. And you can let me know how it feels because I can tell you it's going to feel like success. And then you can commit to just spending the rest of your life getting better at this thing because it feels so good. And then you can come back to me and tell me how successful you've been in the meantime. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Remember, fear of failure is simply getting comfortable with uncomfortable. You do uncomfortable things every single day. And the reason why is because you know the consequence of not doing it and you don't like that. So apply that same principle to the things you have the most fear around and you'll be free forever. I'm sending you so much love. Remember, everything you want is so much closer than you think. So stay curious, stay open, and I'll see you soon.